Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by my guy on the East Coast, Nate Weitzer. Rolling through these NBA playoffs, looking at a few more round two matchups for you guys on a Tuesday night NBA slate. Just a couple games a night as we'll continue to see the rest of the way. If you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find all those local listings in your area and NBA playoff promos available all over the place. And do like and subscribe to the page. Jump in the comments. Let us know who you guys are betting on in these playoffs. Some series odds to consider along the way as we get into all of the games as well, such as the slate for Tuesday night. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, first we have game two with the Sixers hosting the Hawks. -5 is Philly at home. The total is 223 right now, and the Hawks are +170 to pull out a second straight win in that series. And then game one of Clippers at Jazz, Utah, a -4 favorite with a total of 220. Clippers are +150 underdogs there. And I want to start off because when I first saw that line, Hawks +5 after they put the beat down on the Sixers in game one, I said, wow, that's a lot of value. And then I realized, you know what? I am stepping into a trap here. Yes, it would be a lot of value if this game followed the exact same script, but I think it might be quite the opposite. I think the Sixers came out with all their silly pregame histrionics with Joel Embiid and Triple H, as if this series was going to be a walkthrough and they just had to worry about Brooklyn. And Trae Young and company had another idea in mind, and they came out, to their credit, absolutely on fire, hit 14 of their first 18 from the field, went on a 17-0 run in the second quarter, and it was 25 points in a flash. The thing is, the Sixers ended this game with a lot of momentum, with Embiid having his way down low, getting 39 points. It's hard to call that an empty 39, even though he wasn't completely 100% clearly on that knee. And the key there is Ben Simmons switching on to Trae, limiting him a lot compared to his first half eruption. I think 25 of his 35 points came in that first half. Danny Green has pretty much admitted he couldn't handle him. Simmons says he wants him for 40 minutes. He wants all that smoke, and he is the defensive player of the year, I believe. So, I mean, I'm going to put some faith in him and in the Sixers, who have just been fantastic at home for 2 years now, 60-10 now, counting that loss. I'm gonna put some faith in them coming out strong, starting with over 29.5 points in the first quarter. I don't think that's a huge stretch. I'm going to put faith in Embiid getting 30 again. Regardless of whether it's a win, you can get that about even money on FanDuel. And in a win, you get +190 for Embiid to get 30 points. I'm looking at a little bit beyond this game, Josh, and thinking that the Sixers are not only going to win game two, but they might just roll their way through the rest of the series, maybe dropping one more game. But I would look at the series line, -1.5, to get them +185 to win it. Or, rather than taking them just on the series line, which is -140, they need to win game two to win the series, right? So Philly win game two and the series is +110. That's obviously a much better bet than just saying that they're still going to win this thing, which I totally believe they are, despite Trae Young's another magnificent performance from him. And one more thing I will add, with Simmons likely to switch onto Trae Young, Bogey, just a little 16.5 points for his prop. As you mentioned in our last breakdown, he's been flourishing since Nate McMillan took over. He had some big shots in that game, and I think he's really going to benefit from the extra attention paid to Trae. He topped 16 points in that game one. I think he'll do it again there.
Yeah, ice Trae. We'll see. Like you said, Ben Simmons, he should have the energy to guard Trae for the entire game. He did have a nice offensive, showing in a lot of ways, although that 3 for 10 from the field will still continue to haunt him.
Free throws,
from the free throw line. Interesting decision by Nate McMillan to foul him, even though they were winning by 8 towards the end of that game. I think we'll see that sort of increased tempo of defense, I think, played on this team. It's interesting. I thought that, that Atlanta would be the team to try to slow down the pace and maintain a similar pace to how they played in the Knicks series. But they ramped it up, and in the first half kept it up above about 102, 103 and would not stop attacking. It's interesting. I think the sort of switch that needs to be made on the part of Doc Rivers and team is getting Embiid back into the paint every single time. It didn't matter if there was a double team, and then towards the end of the game, as everything just sort of became crazy and looking like the end of a college basketball game there, you found Embiid in the paint alone with Capella one-on-one, treating him like a rag doll. And I think that's exactly what you'll continue to look for. I love, if you're going to bet on this game, I don't mind the points necessarily, but money line with them winning the rest of the series on top of that, I do like that a ton. They're not going to be caught by surprise anymore, and there's going to be a lot of differences in this series. So I'm eyeing a lot of the same stuff as you in there as well. And similarly, I'm eyeing some of that first quarter stuff, early on stuff for the Utah game against the Clippers. Obviously, I think it might be a slightly overtold narrative at this point when a team comes in the playoffs off of, an incredible 7-game series like the Clippers just did versus a well-rested team. The question is always, is the rest going to hurt the team, because they're stale now, or is it going to allow them, in this case, it's definitely at least a positive in the fact that Mike Conley has had some time to rest that hamstring. He continues to be listed as questionable day to day, but I think you and I are both pretty confident that he's going to play in this game for sure, in this game one. So, with that in mind, I am going to kind of eye that stuff. I'm going to eye that first quarter total for the Jazz there. As just one thing to show, how I feel about it. It's -1.5. I think at the very least they'll come out with a lot of fervor. Looking at the regular season series, it was 3 games. It's one of those things I don't think we're going to learn too much, as was the case in a lot of series this season where a lot of guys sat, and random COVID protocols, and you have to take into account a lot of different stuff this year as to why things might have gone the way it did in the regular season. 2 of 3 went to the Jazz. Kawhi and PG didn't play in the last game, and they got blown out. So what I'm looking for though is something that you actually wisely brought to my attention. A big storyline here. What's Rudy Gobert going to do in terms of how he can stay on the floor? He did not have a very good regular season series in 3 games against the Clippers. 27 minutes per game, about 12 points and 10 boards. So not really, somewhat Rudy Gobert numbers, but not the way that they're going to need him to be effective. Maybe they can take a page out of the Boban book in terms of, playing a big man and being able to maintain him on the floor when you have KP, who is a 7-foot 3-point shooter at this point, / kind of pull up mid-range guy. That's really what you're getting from him. No paint protection. So that's kind of similar to what you're going to see with Rudy. I think they're going to need that paint protection in there. They're going to want to be able to force Zubac to have to be on the floor. So that's really going to come down to guys like Marcus Morris and Nicholas Batum. Can they, handle rebounding down low with the size of Gobert in there? Either way, that's going to help determine, I think, the series. I am going to look at Donovan Mitchell to continue to hit his torrid play in the playoffs. I think he's established himself as a playoff player who makes it in big moments. Right now, his points, rebounds, and assists in game one is 38.5. I do think you could see a 30-point game, which will really, help that total right there from him. And then I am going to, I do think that the over is something that we obviously seen, especially since Donovan came back in those 4 games that he's played in the playoffs. The over has hit each time for Utah. And I think, they're going to continue to be able to put points up in a big way. So their team total at 111.5, I'll take that. If you do like the Jazz in this game and the total sits at about 219.5, you might consider, a parlay there. That's plus 200 on DK for the Jazz money line and over 219.5 in game one. Another thing to look at there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Clippers are going to have a little bit of an emotional letdown here. I think they'll be prepared for it. They are a veteran group at this point. But I expect the Jazz to handle business in game one, pulling out a close one perhaps. But I really believe that as the series progresses, the Clippers just have – Tyronn Lue has so many more chess pieces to play. And when you talk about Rudy Gobert as the centerpiece of that, they have so many ways they can hurt the Jazz defensively if they're going to use Rudy. If the Jazz want to play a little zone, use Rudy to protect that rim, they will move the ball around and they will scorch them from deep. And the key in these matchups of the regular season was the Clippers' ability to limit the Jazz from deep, holding them about 34% shooting from 3, which is pretty good. A little below league average, but the thing is the Jazz shoot something like 40% against everybody else at home, especially. That's how they get their offense. Donovan Mitchell was not particularly efficient in any of those matchups, either 24 points per game, 42% field goal. I mean, between PG and Kawhi, I think they can lock him up when they need to. I think the Clippers are winning this series, basically. And I think it's intriguing to take, just like I said with the Hawks, take the Jazz to win game one, but then the Clippers to come back and win this series. You get plus 350 at DraftKings. There's a lot of value there. And I just think that this team, now that they've kind of dispelled that early choke narrative, I think that they're playing a little more free now, and their depth is just too much for a Utah team that is also deep, but just not as versatile. I just think it's too much for them to handle.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities in how these teams play. I think, something interesting is, to your point, the role players stepped up. As we said, they found that small ball lineup. Guys like Batum, Reggie Jackson, and Marcus Morris really contributing heavily in a big way, especially down the stretch. Interestingly, it still all revolves around Kawhi, whose numbers and splits, his shooting splits are out of control in the playoffs, especially his last 10, 15 games in the playoffs. He's out of control, and he's back to that Kawhi that we saw on the Raptors. So, interestingly, the last thing to bring up is, in 2 seasons with the Clippers, Kawhi's field goal percentage, specifically his effective field goal percentage, this is 4 games against Utah since he's been on the Clips. It's his lowest against any team at about 46%. So it's not really good. He has trouble when he gets into the restricted area when Rudy's there, nerding out a little bit more, just in those games, as I mentioned. When Rudy's on the floor, he's about 5 of 13 when he gets into that restricted area. That's less than 50% from, layup range for Kawhi Leonard against this Utah Jazz team, a decent sample size. So, we'll see if that continues. If he comes out and fires away and is still Kawhi in the playoffs, but the Jazz do, still pull out this game, then I'll feel really, really good about that plus 350 bet that we're talking about of the Clippers losing game one, but Kawhi still showing me that they are capable of winning this series and then getting that extra value there on the Clips win. So that is all the time that we have for today, Nate. For Tuesday's show, we'll obviously be back with a Wednesday show as these playoffs continue to roll on. Offer a gift card opportunity for you guys there as well. So make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. And until then, happy betting.